I used to be a lot kinder on this app, but the last few days there have been some incredibly unkind, very aggressive Mormons that really got under my skin, and the best side of me doesn't always come out then. I don't know if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you are, you're a very kind, compassionate one, and I appreciate your civility and your kindness in your comments. I would like to address some of these things in your comment. You're right. Mormons are not taught to ostracize anyone. The leaders of the church never stand up to the pulpit and say, brothers and sisters, you should ostracize people who've left the church. They don't do that. But the messages are very indirect. Let's take some indirect messaging from the Bible. In Matthew chapter 10, Jesus teaches his disciples that they are to go and preach the gospel. And if they come to a city and the people in the city are not going to receive him, they are to shake the dust off of their feet. And then it says in verse 15, verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. I'm going on a limb here, but that sounds a lot like condemnation to me. It sounds like damning these people to hell for not accepting the gospel. And hell is very nuanced for members of the Mormon church. They don't believe in hell in the traditional sense of fire and brimstone and a devil and a pitchfork. They believe in the three kingdoms of glory, and the highest kingdom is the celestial kingdom where you can dwell with God and with your family for the eternities. Anything other than that, which is where people like me are going to go, cannot be with their families forever. They cannot be with God for eternity. And I remember being taught that that was a version of hell. And unfortunately, there are members of the church on this app that are really unkind to people like me who've left the church and pretty much tell us that we're going to enjoy our time in hell. They may not have learned that directly from the leaders of the church, but they learned it from somewhere. When I was a member of the church, and when someone I knew and loved left the church, I was so confused because the church taught me that my number one priority in having any kind of relationship with this person was to bring them back to the church. We were encouraged to make the church a priority in our conversations with our neighbors that may not have been a part of our faith. And it always felt so disingenuous to me. Like whenever I would talk to a member of my family about a neighbor or someone in the community, one of the first things we would say was, oh, they're a member of the church, or they're not a member, but they're a good person. It wasn't until the last couple of years that I began to understand why it felt so wrong for me to have this kind of attitude about other people. I realized that when people left the church, they didn't want someone to preach to them. They already knew what the church believed. What they wanted was to be heard. They wanted to be validated. They wanted someone to say, your experience is okay, and you don't have to come back. So I started listening to the stories of my exMormon friends and learned that every story was filled with tremendous pain. And no, they didn't want to go back to the church because the church had harmed them. So I'd sit and I'd listen to them with empathy and true compassion. And I realized I never learned that from the church, ever. Perhaps your experience was different from mine, and that's awesome if it was. It sounds like you were taught to be more compassionate than I was as a member of the church. I don't believe that you're being apologetic, but I also don't believe that I'm lying. I do believe that many members of the church, not all, have interpreted the messages of the church to say, yeah, we need to be ostracized, and we're going to hell.